The man who, speaking in the terms of being the outstanding human being of Western culture, the symbol of Western culture, points out that although the birds of the air have their nests, and the beasts of the fields have their holes, the Son of Man hath no place to lay his head. That unworldly, in the sense of having renounced most of the things that we call important, that this Son of Man signifies the pure instinct of humanity to search for the solution to its own problem. And after him many followed, who have renounced honor, renounced wealth and worldly possessions, have renounced everything that many hold dear in the effort to be the servants of men. That these concepts and these convictions are important, we cannot deny. Can we deny that they have led the spiritual quest for ages? But this man of earth, this Jesus the Nazarene, is the one whom Paul apparently never met. There is no indication in the Pauline epistles that Paul ever knew Jesus in the flesh. On the road to Damascus, Paul met something else, however. He met the intangible likeness of the divine man. He beheld or met or knew by inward experience the mystery of the Christos. Therefore he divided naturally and inevitably between these two. For the Jesus of Nazareth walked the earth with his disciples, but the Christos was not known even to them, unless perchance in a mystery. Yet this other power, the man of heaven, was very close to the man of earth in the case of Jesus, because Jesus had dedicated his life and his labors to the revelation of this man of heaven. So Paul sees in this symbol a union between heavenly and earthly value in all men. He also assumes that the greatest and highest good that can come to any human being is that that human being shall discover in himself the heavenly one, the heavenly man, and that this heavenly man is in the likeness of the heavenly nature of man. For as Jesus was born in the likeness of the earthly man, so the Christos is born in the likeness of the spiritual inner man in each human being. And as the disciples followed their Lord on earth, so the souls of the righteous follow their Lord in heaven. The spiritual or Christos being is therefore the teacher of souls, as Jesus was the teacher of minds and hearts. Paul believed this, and therefore considered that there was an inner life of man, a life that must be cultivated. And other mystics, following in his footsteps and in his thinking, have come to a number of interesting conclusions about this inner life of man in relation to the divine power that abides there. Whereas of the earth all things are under the measure of time, so that they have their beginnings, their middle distances, and their ends, so all things in this world by material measurement must advance with expediency, or in the loss of time all is lost. However, in the world of heavenly values, the inner life of man, time is by no means so oppressing an agency. That time may exist in some abstract pattern we do not deny. But we also know that our own consciousness is not nearly as subject to time as is the body. There is an inner timelessness. And in this inner timelessness, the experiences of consciousness take place. In our material life, experience has to be measured in years. In our spiritual life, experience has to be measured in intensities. For intensity takes the place of extensity, and that which may take years of material effort may be achieved in the twinkling of an eye in the inner life of man. But this does not mean that less energy or labor be required. It means, however, that more intensive activities make possible more immediate, apparent results. The energy, the labor is no less, but the dimension in which it operates is different. Thus, according to most mystics, the demand of the spiritual life of man is never actually in conflict with his material life. Man was not presumed to require that he shall depart from all of his labors and his works in order to cultivate his spiritual intensities. Spirit being something that is a byproduct in a way of his conduct, of his attitudes, of his living, of his thinking, is something that has a strange immediacy about it. As the Zen masters in Japan point out, material evolution is very slow, but spiritual evolution is very rapid. It is rapid to the degree that man obeys and keeps the rules and makes possible the situations that are necessary. Thus, the time requirements of the man of heaven are not like the time requirements of family, of friends, and all these other problems that burden us in this world. The time requirement is the intensity of integrity, and man experiencing, as the mystics have told us, the transcendent identity with the man of heaven, have found that this experience required only a fraction of an earthly second, yet while it was occurring, it seemed to last forever. It is therefore not intended that the way of heaven should turn men from the fulfillment of their normal tasks, because this inner way is a way of life that is strangely independent of earth, and yet has the heaviest and most complete effect upon all earthly things. Assuming, as Paul tells us, that the man of heaven shall break through, or must break through into earth, through man, he therefore, without actually stating the exact words, but through the summary of his idea and doctrine, points out that it is the labor of Christendom that each individual shall emulate the life of Jesus, becoming in this way the proper man of earth, and that when he has achieved this, heaven itself will bestow the man of heaven upon this perfected human being. That consequently man must prepare the way of the Lord and make his path straight. And this preparation is the preparation in self of the way of heaven, the creation within our own natures of a similitude to righteousness, that we may become of such nature that the divine flows into us and flows through us naturally, not by ordination or by special dispensation, but because all things attract their like, and man who attains to the attraction of heaven attracts heaven. In the Christian mystery also, this season of the year becomes closely associated with the total concept of the mystery. For at this time, the man of heaven is traditionally believed to take upon itself or himself the body of earth. Here the divine power, the Christos, was reported to have overshadowed and made ready the way of the Lord. And here in the week that lies ahead, throughout Christendom will be celebrated the mystery of the Nativity of the Lord. Now the Gospels point out to us very clearly, however, that it was not until the baptism by John that the sovereignty of the Christos Jesus mystery was consummated. First of all, there had to be born the man of earth. This man of earth, born in the manger, surrounded by beasts, indicated its own natural origin, that it was born out of the earth earthy, that it was surrounded by an animal creation, that there was no room for this birth in the inn, that it had to be born in the stable grotto that was apart from the inn. There was also the promise that the birth of this good man was to have great and lasting consequences. And out of the east came the wise ones, bringing their gifts to the newborn babe. And here, the good man of earth, the selected one, the one who was to bear witness and to testify, was peculiarly set apart from others. To the Pauline concept, this mystery at Bethlehem represented essentially the restoration or the conscious dedication of the person to the way of virtue or the way of goodness. The birth of Jesus is the birth of the good man in the life of everyone. It is the birth of resolution to live according to the law, the dedication of the person to principles and values and virtues and integrities worthy of him. So that actually man is born several times, at least 3 times in ancient mystic literature. First, he is born physically into this world. Then, having attained a certain majority, he is born intellectually or egoically into this world. And then, having attained to the transcendence of wisdom by renunciation, he passes through the philosophic death and is reborn a 3rd time, this time as a master of wisdom. So in the case of Jesus, or in the case of our own lives, we perceive that born out of our worldliness, born out of our pain and our sorrow, born out of our disillusionments and our dedications, born perhaps mostly out of our great need for the consolation of spirit, there is born within each of us finally the world hero, the heroic self, the self that is dedicated to truth, the self that is resolved that it shall lead the way to a fuller and more abundant life. And to this self, then, having received its integration, come the wise ones, come the 3 parts of man's life, to bear witness and to give honor to the newborn resolution of good. And man finds that he has 3 wonderful instruments come to worship him. And that is the good thought, the good emotion, and the skillful hand. These 3 become the servants of this great new good, and bring the offerings of their skills, their abilities, their opportunities to the manger in Bethlehem. Also the star of promise, of good hope, shines in the sky. And on this event, the individual, for the first time, really realizes and knows that he is moving into the great way of ages, the way of truth, the way that will finally bring him to the peace which surpasseth understanding. And so he continues, and in his own way man must build this body. He must go on perfecting his works, building patiently and quietly, doing these things by which, as Plotinus the Neoplatonist points out, he ascends the ladder, coming nearer and nearer to his own mystical nature, gradually transforming his vices into virtues, gradually releasing through himself all of the good things which he associates with the man of good, whom he has already visualized within his own nature. These achievements are not of words, but always of conduct, always the individual relaxing away from tension by the clarification and simplification of life, relaxing toward peace, toward love, toward charity, realizing that criticism is a dividing force, but that charity suffereth long and is kind. Therefore, by degrees, this being achieves its maturity. And then in the baptism by John, we have the symbolical union of the man of heaven and the man of earth. We have the spiritual being, the ideal being, taking over completely the administration of the life. We have man, therefore, dedicated. We have him set aside, ordained into the eternal ministry of truth. And as Paul points out, this is the result of a kind of union, a union of things higher and lower, a bringing together of all things divided and separate. By this, as the words of the apocryphal statement of Jesus, the outside becomes like the inside, and the inside becomes like the outside. The body has become soul, and consciousness has become a spiritual soul power, and these are united in the mysterious sacrament of the marriage of the Lamb. Having thus achieved the union between Christ and the ecclesia, or the church, the tremendous mystery of the union becomes manifested. For in this union there is the new heaven and the new earth. And let us point out in passing the distinct statement that there will be a new heaven as well as a new earth. This is contrary again to our common thinking, because we cannot imagine heaven being renovated. Yet in a sense, such renovation is inevitable, because the union of divided parts brings with it a new totality, a heavenly earth and an earthly heaven, a gradual compounding of these values into a great middle distance, so that we finally achieve the soul equilibrium represented by the Christos power itself. For the Christos becomes both the embodiment of God and the sublimation of man. Actually, the Christos therefore becomes the God-man, the being in whom all divisions and opposites of qualities are reconciled, in which the above and the below meet in the common distance of soul. They are welded together into an eternal compound. Here, therefore, we have the true estate of the ensouled man. We have the union of the Jesus Christos in one being, earth and heaven bound together. We also have this as a key or pattern of conduct and institution. We have arising from this the way of life that shall not pass away. We have also the promise of heavenly government, of universal understanding, peace, and accord. Things brought upward from below to meet the descending power of truth, united in their own middle parts and distances, to attain a transcendence of equilibrium, of things no longer movable, but fixed forever according to their natures. Of course, such terms are symbolical, but they have been long used to convey an idea. And if they can convey that idea, that is all we can ask of them. So on this Christmas season, we realize that we have a long way to go to achieve this union that we so deeply desire. Yet we know that this long way is in terms of human mortal time and distance. We know also that as to the coming of the Lord, the hour no man knoweth. We know also that in this mystery, that the ascent of consciousness itself, the internal life of the individual growing stronger through the dedications of purposes, that this process brings with it a continuous alchemy of transformation. that every day we are thereby increasing or building the bridge which bridges heaven and earth. And it is in this case the bridge that builds or bridges these two vast intervals, the interval of spirit and matter, is indeed the great bridge of the mysteries, and that Christ, as the Pontifex Maximus, is the great bridge builder, and that this building represents the bridging of two worlds, the harmonious union of the visible and the invisible, on levels of conduct possible to man, advisable for man, bringing him not some strange, distant, abstract, fanatical type of virtue, but a very real and immediate understanding. The true proof of this bridging is that man shall be more practical, that he shall fulfill his duties more completely. With greater wisdom and greater understanding he shall do all things well, avoiding nothing and evading nothing, because understanding does not have to avoid or have to evade. With adequate understanding and adequate mystical apperception, we can accept life without tension. We can accept the ways of life without fear or regret. We can accept difference without criticism. We can accept the mistakes of others without condemnation. We can do all things more wisely and more lovingly, because the Spirit of love moving in us is the eternal Redeemer, and is also the Prince of Peace, whose coming brings to an end the war of nations. And as we worship a deity who is the Prince of Peace, we must worship with peace. And as we worship a power which loveth and cherisheth always, and we also worship a power which will be with us unto the ends of the world. Realizing all these things, we must interpret them in codes of conduct, of attitude, of hope, and of faith, and of willingness to serve and to understand. And in this type of work, and in this way of labor, we build toward this union of the man of heaven and the man of earth. And even though the union may not immediately be apparent, we perceive gradually that our greatest strength comes not from the world, but from within ourselves. We shall observe that the power of heaven in consolation and in maintaining the efficiency and efficacy of our activity is far greater than the power of earth. For that all things of this earth change, fade, and vanish away, but the power of heaven moving through man never ceases. And the individual who has gained the power of sharing in the nutrition of life, of pure life, shall drink of that water, which when man drinks thereof, he shall thirst no more. So man, moving toward heaven in his own natural, simple way, discovers the abundances and vitalities and powers that are released to him, which previously he knew not of. He therefore gradually discovers that the way of good, the way of being, is not a way of penance or of renunciations. It is a way of fullness and of rewards. It is only because we have taken on certain theological colorings that we have come to believe that the religious life is a difficult life. The really difficult life is the profane life, the life which has no foundations in faith, and therefore no supports in emergency. Actually, the true way of life in religion is one of natural growth. The flower does not suffer because it blossoms. There is no reason why the individual should regard growth as painful. It is natural. Rather, it is his resistance to growth, or his attempt to change and force patterns to meet his own willfulness. Such are the causes of his suffering and his misfortune. But to grow naturally is to grow toward heaven, to unfold all things that are good, and to turn the face as the flower to the sun. When we do these things and do them properly, we have no regrets and no misgivings and no wrenching detachments from the things we think we want and the things we believe to be satisfactory. That which we outgrow falls from us without pain. That which we have not outgrown we cannot easily renounce. Actually, our whole problem is therefore to recognize the gradual union of these two beings, the being of heaven and the being of earth, united in the middle distance of man's psychic achievement, the building and perfecting of his own soul, the possibility of the man of earth becoming the instrument, the perfect servant of the man of heaven, and finding in this service the most intimate and enduring ties, a fraternity as close as that of Damon and Pythias, a magnificent and wonderful voluntary unity, a unity which is the fullness of all things desired and necessary. This, I believe, was Paul's concept of the difference between the two terms, Jesus and the Christ, and how these have come together to represent to man a being in which the inner and the outer life have been bridged, have been brought into harmony, so that the man of earth becomes the channel for the will of God and for the good things which the universe has in store for humanity. For humanity's way is a noble way. Man only has to claim his heritage, and he claims his heritage by becoming one with the law governing the fulfillment of his heritage.